Goes. All right. I guess a quick roll call for the four of us, and then we'll kind of dive in.
I don't think we have to do a roll call for
All
a
right.
work group.
Sounds good.
This is work group.
Touche.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. All right.
Trevor, did you get a sense of whether John had?
No, I remember him
wanted to-
mentioning at our last meeting that he would not be able to attend for this date, but said go ahead and go without him. So
Okay.
I do not think he will be joining. So my kind of proposal how to proceed, and actually with four of us, we may be quite efficient today, is just to pull up Mr. Pierce. I can share my screen if need be. Pull up Mr. Pierce document and just kind of go through it. I guess first is Michael, thanks a ton for doing that. I read through it and it was exactly kind of what we talked about, and I appreciate the effort on that. It was super helpful, so thank you. All right. Nate, do you want to share that document on your screen, or do you want me to? I'm okay with either.
Yeah, no, I can do it.
Okay, great.
Give me 1 second. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Yep. I think, Michael, you caught kind of our worries of just being like, we're in a crazy time right now. And so it's hard to really tell what's systemic, regarding inflation and all that, and what is kind of transitory. I think it's a problem we all in the world have at the moment. If you could scroll over, Nate, to the kind of the substance at the bottom, the questions. Yep. Okay. Okay, so first one, this we spent some time on. I think it was pretty clear the number of trucks for each category. And I guess, Michael, would your suggestion be those will be free form? So like next to light, there'll be a free form box and they can literally or maybe a drop down. I guess it could be a drop down or a form.
Actually, I didn't really intend to think about format.
Gotcha.
Here. It was mostly instead of inserting tables into this document, I just saved some time and wrote it in an outline form. So it as far as I can tell, it could go either way.
Okay.
It might be whatever seems less of a turnoff, I guess, is where I would head.
So like I suggested at the last meeting, I think if we set it up so that we essentially circulate two different versions, one's going to be essentially a printout where they can kind of write their answers in. And then secondary would be essentially a fillable PDF of the same exact format for the most part. But instead of, physically writing in what your answer is, they could just click into that box and they'll be able to type something in. So like I was imagining something like this, where you could do like that. And then this would be the one they would print out. And then they can just write, a number in that field, and then similar here, so kind of the same thing here, that kind of thing.
I agree.
So
100%.
I was imagining something like that. If that's something you're okay with, Michael.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I think super simple. They just write it in and it is what it is. There'll be some tower who puts in the letter 7 or letter C or something like that. But mostly I think they'll figure it out.
So for the different classes of trucks, did we want to use the same terminology, so to speak, that they did in for the cost model that we have? Because for that one, I'm booting it up just now. So okay, so for this one, they had light, medium heavy, and rotator.
Right.
So the light would be
Oh.
10,000 or less pounds. Medium would be 10,001 to 19,000. Medium heavy would be 19,001 to 33,000, and heavy would be 33,001 plus. Oh, and then rotator would be looks like
Yeah.
less than 60 tons.
Rotator.
Yeah, I'm looking
Oh,
down
it's-
here.
Oh,
here
yeah,
on the
yeah.
tab. That to me looks like under 60 tons or less than 60 tons. But I think people are
Yeah.
going to know what a rotator is.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And they don't make small rotators. Thank God. But yeah, they don't make small rotators, and so they'll all be in that range. Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't think it'll hurt our. It's kind of 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. But all things being equal, if we can make it align with the previous study, because there's some chance that we will use this data to use the previous study as kind of our benchmark and not recreate the wheel. So I would argue that yes, I agree with you, Nate. Let's make it the same.
So it would be light, medium,
Medium, heavy.
heavy, heavy, and then
Mhm.
rotator.
Rotators.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay,
I
great.
would, I would suggest also just to stay with the with what's being used in the document that you just went to. It might be good to put in the weights.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah,
You okay with that, Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, all the towers will. So I guess I'll say this: they are going to put in whatever their definition of light is, which for like a light and medium duty is pretty clear. Everyone kind of knows. But they're not going to, like, the weights won't change what they put in there. They're just going to think in their head, I've got 3 mediums. So I guess it doesn't hurt, but it's slightly redundant.
Is that terminology already fairly
It's pretty
strongly
uniform.
used? Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty uniform.
Okay.
And mostly because that's how the dealers break it out, and the manufacturing companies who put the beds on break them out by those weights. And so, and also the insurance companies, they put them into those categories based on weights. So there won't be much ambiguity on what's what.
Okay. Well, also shifting. So the only 2-word category now is medium heavy, and it was light medium.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote down in my notes, and so I guess I'm a little worried whether that's consistent with trade terminology.
That particular one will be a little bit, that's the one that'll be kind of squishy. So like what one tower might consider, because really there's light, medium, heavy, and rotators. And generally that's how in most states, when they break up the fees, it's based on the type of equipment you use. And generally speaking, there's not a medium heavy. And so that's the one where some towers might guess a little bit, like what one tower might put something in medium heavy that another tower might put in medium, or they may put in heavy. But I think in keeping with, I think it's good to do it this way in keeping with the previous study. So that way if we determine we're going to compare them, it's at least apples to apples, maybe.
Okay. Is it okay? So if that's the case, then I would strongly suggest putting in the actual weights.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
we
that
can
would provide
You
some
okay with that?
guidance.
Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So okay, that's sorry, right. This would be less than 10,000. Should I say GVWR or just 10,000? Is that fine?
Yeah, just 10,000 is fine. They'll know what you're talking about.
Okay, so that was less than 10,000. This one is 10,001 to 19,000.
Yeah.
Medium heavy was 19,001 to, what was it? 33,000, I
Yep.
believe.
Yep.
And then heavy is 33,001 plus.
Yep. And then rotator, you can leave blank because that's not a weight designation, although they are very large. It's more of a type of equipment designation.
And your less than needs to be a less than. You have a greater than.
Yeah, on your first one, Nate, I read that as being greater than 10. The way you have it.
Okay. Yeah, I always, yeah. Okay.
Although I think people could read it either way. What do you, Mr. Roberts, which one do you read as being less than 10, that way or the previous way?
So with the little alligator mouth open to the right, that's less than. And
Okay.
I'm recalling Mrs. Monk, my third grade teacher.
Yeah, I concur. Okay, great. Yeah, I think that looks good.
Let me get these all sorted out.
You use just insert a tab, define tab, that would make that all consistent.
Do what?
Do a define tab, and that would make all those consistent. That way you can edit on the left side and not have to worry about that. So just click up in the that what you call it, the measuring spot, right below paragraph. So if you up in that area, move off to the right to where you want the blanks to be, and then you define a tab there. So no, don't move those. Just move your cursor over to say where the 4 is.
I don't see a 4.
In the ruler.
Oh, here.
Yeah, and just click there, and the tab should go in there.
Oh, oops.
Normally
I shot it off to the
show
right.
Okay. Never mind. Just
Okay. Yeah.
this
We'll
is
just,
taking longer than
okay, that's fine.
than-
Okay, and then number of employees. So are we done with the weight classes? Are we okay with that?
Yep, I'm good with it.
Okay. Number of employees.
So the
So-
alternate was FTEs, and so if you've got a lot of, say, one business could say have 20 employees, but really only 8 full-time equivalents. So, I mean, it really, what that does is just gives a sense of what your employee payroll load is.
So there may be at the danger of sounding like I'm talking down to my industry, which I'm not trying to do. There will be some towers who literally don't know what FTE means. Like there's a lot of towers who literally don't like have emails. And so I might just put number of employees. I think for the most part, if they have part-time employees, they'll estimate.
About something like that.
Yeah. Perfect. Yep. I think that's the way to do it.
What do you have? Yeah, well, are there many businesses though that will have like a fair number of employees but part-time?
Not really. There certainly will be a few small ones, but most towing companies do not have part-time employees. If they do, it's like, they have a high schooler who like works part-time, moving cars around the yard or something for auctions or something along those lines, but they won't have many.
What do we want to make kind of a, I don't know, some note or something on this one where we, I'm not sure if this is a big thing, but to like include, I mean, independent contractors is the thing that's popping into my head. So I don't know if that's a big thing.
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah. Not in Colorado. It's not.
Okay. All right. Are we good with the number 2?
Yep. I'm good with it if you guys go.
Okay. I know we
Yeah.
had talked about like splitting it up into different tiers of employment, but I'm fine
Right.
just keeping it.
Yeah, I think that's too much.
I guess
Okay.
just to register it, because it does come into trying to figure out costs, would be whether how many people are at the high paid level, so senior management. So I'm assuming that most will only have like one senior management position. But if there's a larger company where you've got a number of people who are fairly well paid.
I can't think of a towing company besides ours that has what I would call senior management that are employees. They're almost all like the owner or the family who owns it would be considered like senior management. There's like, one, maybe two of them. And then, they have supervisors and stuff, but none of them are large enough. Again, we're an exception to the rule to have like senior management.
Okay. All right. So, okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay, business location. Okay, principal address. They can just type that in. On that one though, maybe Nate. Well, on the written part, with the ones who do it written, they'll just obviously write it.
Mhm.
On the folks that do it via like a SurveyMonkey or whatever, I would have like the zip code be a separate field, so that way when you export the data into Excel, you can sort it easily. If that kind of makes sense, by zip code or something. Because if it's all one free-flowing thing, then it might be hard to use the data later if we get a lot of responses.
I think we'll probably be okay.
Okay.
Just because I'm not really expecting a huge flurry of responses. So
That's
I mean,
that's a valid point.
I think we'll be lucky. I mean, if we get 50 plus responses,
you're
I think
right,
we'll be in
you're
good
right.
shape. So I mean, it's not too hard to manually
No,
put that in.
yeah, actually, you're 100% right. If we get 50
So,
responses, I'll feel like it was
yeah.
a good one.
Actually, could I make that? Could I actually elevate that a little bit more? Just because I was thinking that it would be super useful to be able to stratify the answers by region, and since we're not going to ask them for to define what region they're in, we can do that ourselves. But there's a few different ways of stratifying by region, right? So the one that I'm super familiar with is affordable housing, the housing related areas as defined by the Housing Task Force and what they were looking into. But then there's other discussions about different regional costs, and I believe I forget his name, which one, but one of the officers last time had mentioned that they have an enforcement map. So at any rate, at least for data analysis, you've got a variety of ways of defining which regions the answers are coming from, and you can get some interesting distinctions between costs and I want to say frequency of towing needs. And so having a separate field with a zip code in it allows you to take advantage of those different ways of stratifying your information. The thing is we can do this we can hand enter it ourselves later so that we don't complicate the form. So I'm indifferent to having to do that in the form itself that others fill out, but just wanted to point out that it would be really handy to have that in a separate cell on any spreadsheets that we generate. The zip codes.
Yeah. Like as far as the service area, yeah, I agree. I remember we talked about that with I think they called them their control districts or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly what it was called. So there's an elegant way to do that. That'd be great. But.
So I have an alternative. It's something that we use for an annual report that we generate. And the only reason I mention this is because, no, actually, maybe that wouldn't work. Because there's an annual report that we produce where we kind of outline different types of carriers by geographic area, and it's contingent on the zip code. And the zip code, you basically plug it into a spreadsheet, and then it generates essentially lists of where these people operate. I don't know if this is considered like proprietary or something, but it basically lists it out into the I-70 corridor, which is let's see, like Clear Creek, Summit, Grand, Eagle, Pitkin, Garfield, Mesa. Metro, which is Douglas, Arapahoe, Denver, Adams, Boulder. Northwest, which is Rio Blanco, Moffett, Route, Jackson. Southwest, Gunnison, Delta, Montrose, Montezuma, Rio Grande, Alamosa. Pueblo is its own. El Paso is its own. North, LMT, Larimer, Weld, and then everything else is just other. So again, we have something like that set up. I'd have to check and see if this is something we could use, kind of, because we use it for a different purpose at the PUC, but it is kind of an outline that we already have generated. I wouldn't see a huge deal using it, but I'd have to check just to make sure that that's okay.
Those are great divisions. The only change I would, the only reason I would want something slightly different than what you just mentioned would be Eastern Colorado is doesn't seem to be well represented there, and so because the economy of Eastern Colorado is so different from Front Range and West, I would myself want to have that separated out.
Is that kind of caught up in other, Nate? So like if they do other, then by definition they're in a rural area.
Yep.
Well,
I mean, there's other rural areas that are captured in other of these.
Right.
These other, like Southwest, for example. There's an outline of kind of all of the Southwest state counties, and then I-70 corridor is everything kind of along there on either side of I-70. Then you got north, it would be Northwest, kind of north, but yeah, it's all the eastern counties like Lincoln, Kit Carson, Washington, Yuma, Logan, Cheyenne, Las Animas, Prowers. Those are all just in the other category. That wasn't specifically noted as like the eastern category, for example.
But the other category does pretty much capture all the.
Oh yeah, no, every county in the state is captured. It's just a lot of them that we couldn't really put into its own category.
Box.
We just kind of stuck into an other category.
Right. Well, so real quick, are there any western counties that go in there?
Well, we have a northwest essentially and a southwest. And then the remaining ones are basically the immediate counties on the immediate south and north of the I-70 corridor. So that's its own category too.
So basically, you have Northwest, Southwest, which covers like half of Colorado. And you have
those three categories are half of Colorado.
And then the I-70 corridor, so that's the three. And then you have Denver Metro, the Springs area, and then other, which basically captures all of Eastern Colorado.
Yeah, it captures some of the counties that are kind of in the middle, like Park, Teller, Fremont, Custer, Lake, and then it kind of goes down around Pueblo and then up and covers the entire Eastern.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's the other category.
Gotcha. I think that would work pretty well. I mean, obviously, I'll just say this: the vast majority of the towers, like 95%, if not more, are going to fall into those categories. Like there may be like 4 actual no joke towing companies in Eastern Colorado, and so I think that I would support that kind of breakdown, especially since you've already used it before. It would kind of fit in.
Yeah, we use it for a different purpose, but it is. I can't imagine they wouldn't say it would be all right to kind of use the data we're collecting through this survey and just plug it into this model, and it'll immediately tell us how many carriers are operating, and all we need is a zip code. So
I like that, and actually, I think for the purposes of keeping the survey like simple, like it's going to be a very rare occurrence that the principal address does not represent the general service area. Like it's just not. Like you're not going to have a tower who has his like tow yard, for example, in Denver, but does most of his towing out on the I-70 corridor. It just like isn't a thing. So frankly, I think like just having your principal addresses and not even having service area is literally like a 99% solution. Like towers are always going to they're going to do their work around their primary address.
Right. Well, I thought I picked up though that some of the towers, the bigger ones, are going to have larger service areas than the smaller ones. so that was one of the reasons for including that in addition to the address. And so just wanted to get a sense of how many of those. So
What if we did, here's a solution, Michael. So what if we keep that question service area, but yeah, so for going back to the principal addresses, I mean, are we asking for the full address or just a zip code?
Honestly, I would just ask for the zip code. I mean, if we
Okay.
really want to know their address, we could
So-
know the name of the company.
So what we could do is we could make this a like we'll make an identifier here, like a zip code is what we want. And then down here, we could make a little comment, something like, if different from principal address,
I see.
addresses. Something like that. So that, again, they don't have to put anything in if it's pretty much the same, like you indicated, wherever their storage facility or wherever their primary business address is, that's essentially where they're operating for the most part. They might expand into other areas. And if that's the case, they can just jot in another zip code or two if they want.
Yeah, I like that. In case there are some outliers.
What do you think about that, Michael?
that works. That
Okay.
sounds good.
Okay, great.
All right. So are we done with demographic, or is there anything else we need to cover in there?
I'm good with demographic.
All right.
All right. Okay, estimate, this is kind of the meat of it. Estimate what % of your revenues go towards covering the following costs: labor, fuel, insurance, rent, vehicles. I like that. It's going to be funny. I'm interested to see how many don't add up to 100%. But there'll be a couple. But it'll at least give us directionally accurate, I guess. But I like the way that's set up.
Yeah, actually, the way the question is formed, if it's the amount of revenues that goes to there's kind of a hidden way of getting a sense of profit. So,
Oh, yeah. Good point.
so yeah. So I'm hoping that they won't add up to 100%.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We might be able to deduce. I mean, they'll be guessing mostly, but
right.
but on average, if we get a bunch of them, and it turns out that like when you add them all together, there's like 12% left, then that would align with our expectation like it's my estimate that they have about 12% profits, maybe.
Right.
So
Um,
I like that.
Did we hit all the major categories here?
Yeah.
those are
I think-
those are the ones that were listed during the discussion. So yeah.
Yep.
And then put in other just in case people have
Catch-all.
some other costs that they think is important to
Yeah.
to include. Another thing that that I'm hoping wasn't too much of a turnoff or just a head scratcher would be on the property expense. So we've got rent or let's see, how is it phrased? Rent or property ownership. So if they got a mortgage and you're asking for percentage change in your cost, if you got a mortgage, that's not going to change really. But what will change will be your taxes, depreciation, and I forget what else I put in there. Yeah, and you'll maybe putting in some capital improvement, and so because as a landlord, you're wrapping all of those costs into your rent. For owners of their own property, wanted to get a sense of how those costs figure in. So I listed those, but then actually estimating them may be hard or may stimulate people to go, I don't want to do this anymore. So I was just curious for feedback on that.
I think that they'll get it mostly because it's such a big expense. The only thing I'd say is we have capital improvements depreciation. I would remove depreciation. I think that might confuse them because you don't fixed assets like property, you actually don't depreciate. capital improvements you could if you were a towing company that was GAP compliant from an accounting standpoint, but that's not a thing. Like they don't exist. So any capital improvements they do, they'll be expensing. So, but I think if you say rent or property ownership and you put mortgage, property taxes, capital improvements, they'll all generally understand exactly what you're saying. They're like, what, after I do all this stuff, how much am I paying to be here and like have my facility here? They'll get that mostly.
Okay.
And if they don't, then like how to help them.
Yeah. Okay. So take out depreciation then.
Yeah. And then I think
yeah, buildings do depreciate. So
yeah,
if,
they do. But
if you are accounting for stuff, especially you need to repair your roofs, you need to repaint, you need to reside things. So you need, if you aren't properly accounting for your costs, you need to throw in some kind of a depreciation schedule.
Yeah, I agree. But just towers, the way their books are done, because these are small businesses that don't have like professional accountants doing accrual based accounting and stuff.
Mhm.
Like to them, like to a tower, depreciation means your truck expenses. Like that's what they associate. So I think they'll get confused. Because I am certain that none of them are like depreciating their buildings or anything like that.
Okay. Right.
Again, I may not be giving enough credit to towers, but my experience in the marketplace tells me that they do.
Okay.
All right. I like vehicles, purchase, upkeep, and repair. That kind of covers that. I like that. So I'm good with those categories. I think they're written well. I would on labor, I guess we need to talk about, do we want to do senior management, other employees? My argument would be just to keep it simple and put total labor costs as opposed to kind of senior management. And also like senior management kind of, like an owner, his actual like payments for labor, his salary may not be very much, but he pays himself with after tax pre-tax distributions. So he's getting taxed on it, but it's not actually getting captured in his payroll. And so that make it a little weird. So I would just pretty much leave it as labor.
Yeah. But this is also aiming for cost versus treating the payment for the senior level.
Right.
Profit. So, but it is, as I've been trying to emphasize, that is a figure that would like to know, just because, because it is discretionary, and if it's relatively high and the non-consensual consumers are paying for that highness, then that's reason for bringing the cost down a bit.
Yeah. I agree. The only argument I would make is that like senior management outside of ownership doesn't exist. Like generally, like they don't have high paid like executives or anything like that don't also own the company. It's just because these are all like really small businesses.
Okay. All right. So part of just the background for asking that too is the Utah study did include senior management as one of the admin costs, and they estimated the senior management position as $80K per year. So yeah. So mostly that was my question was based on the Utah study, using that as a figure.
Yeah, I don't have a super strong opinion. What do you think, Nate?
I mean, I like the idea of setting it up kind of in a way where we can at least try to use the cost model tool that they put together, the last task force did. I mean, I'd like to try to set that up in a similar way. And again, just because it's set up in a certain way doesn't mean we can't make little minor deviations from it. I think we can still use kind of the guts of what that tool does, and just make little subtle changes to it to capture, what information we have. Maybe there might be a few fields we didn't capture, and so we can just eliminate those.
Right.
But continue to use the tool kind of as it's set up.
And right now, how does it have labor broken out?
Now let's take a look. So let's see. So it's broken up by management costs, administrative costs, employee costs. So probably management costs and employee costs.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like on a per driver basis.
Okay, then I might argue more like what Michael's saying then, just to keep consistent with the old study, is to have like labor dash management costs and then have the next one labor dash employee, or like, employee costs or whatever. And then have them kind of fill it in. I certainly wouldn't break it out into admin, support, driver, all that kind of stuff. That's like gonna be too complicated. But yeah, I think we can put management and then labor other or something like that.
However we do it, we'll have to do it the same for questions 1 and 2.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm good with it.
Well-
Yeah. So maybe, Michael, what do you think about we put basically we're going to add another like category to the list. Let's say labor dash management. And then the next one could be labor dash employees. I mean, even though ostensibly labor is employees, but they'll understand, I think, what we're saying here.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
And it may or may not be instructive based on what they define, but at the end of the day, we get the same information because we can combine the two, and that's their labor costs. So, okay, good. All right, and then on the next one, I would go ahead and add the same thing. And then I would just change on D, but I guess that might be the new E. The removing depreciation.
Do we need? Are we done on 1 and 2?
I think so. Yeah.
Do we even need question 3? Isn't that what this captures up here?
Oh yeah, we do already have that. You're right. So I think we can remove 3 completely, actually.
Sorry, where was that?
Number
It was-
3.
It was number 3. It said, what number of trucks do you have for the following weight classes?
Which is the
Yeah,
demographic
that's-
question.
I was going to say that's the number 1 question up here. So you could probably get rid of that one.
Oh, gotcha. Right.
Then we got the new 3.
Yeah.
What proportion of your tows are in the following weight class tow types? Is that the one where we were thinking about maybe using this thing here?
Yeah, kind of like the matrix or whatever. I mean, we could turn the matrix into just a list that they could fill out. But I don't think there's any way to do it that doesn't make it a little bit long or complicated, because at the end of the day, they're having to fill out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 4, 20 categories. Some may be 0, obviously, but I don't know. I might argue like actually doing a table, like letting them fill out a table.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be hard to put a table into this.
And then they could just kind of like hand jam it in there again in the hopes that it was 100%.
So it would be based on this. Oh, did we want to add a rotator category at the end here?
Oh yeah,
So
good catch.
here, let me update that. So it'd be rotator. Okay, so then, yeah, and again, this was the thing I made a comment in our last meeting. I still feel like there's 3 categories of towing, especially with what the new legislation is doing, which is you got your non-consensual tows, which now is specific to private property tows. So
Mhm.
private property impounds. You got your consensual, which I like the idea of including some examples here like this.
Yep.
And then the third category being law enforcement ordered tows. So, I mean, I don't know that we'd have to go so far as to say law enforcement ordered tows from public property. I mean, I know that's what most of them are, but I think just when I think of categories of tows, those are the three I always say. So law enforcement ordered tows, non-consensual tows, consensual tows. So
Yeah, I think so. Cause like now that the definition has changed, I think you're 100% right. Like law enforcement, technically, at least in Colorado statute is now not non-consensual towing.
exactly.
It is everywhere else in America. And the towers will always continue to call law enforcement non-consent. But I think you're right. Like, let's just break it out and say non-consent, which is private property. So it's the only kind of non-consent now. And then consent and then law enforcement. That's fine.
So would we then, okay. So I'm just thinking of what the chart would look like. So I think it could look kind of like this, basically.
Mhm.
We'll add that third law enforcement ordered tow category here.
Yeah.
And then, I don't think that would be hard to put that together.
Okay, perfect.
And insert it in. What's this down here? What is this? Is this something we were going to do, but we're not doing anymore? What is this?
Yeah, I think we thought about doing like having them fill out their cost as a percent of revenue.
Okay.
Basically, it's question number one
for 1 and 2. It sounds like almost.
Yeah. But I think how we have it is, I think how Michael better.
Well, and I think we could get, I think we could use something like this for questions 1 and 2 that they could fill in, because it's going to be hard to make it look right, because I think everything we have in these questions needs to be there. So it doesn't really leave a lot of room for writing anything in. So I think we can restructure this into more of a table, so that you basically would have 3 tables, 1 for 1, 1 for 2, 1 for 3, to make it easier for them to just fill out what they need to fill out. Okay.
I'm okay with either. I like the way Michael did it, but I'm okay with the table also. I don't have a opinion.
Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts on that, Michael? Just having it be more tables to fill this stuff. I mean, we could probably make at least questions 1 and 2 look a little more like these up here, where you kind of have a little fillable.
That's what I would do. I would make them look. I would have it how Michael has it, and then just have a little fillable thing to the right.
Okay.
Make it easy for him.
Yeah, that's fine.
My sense is that the matrix is really only it's most useful for that one question of
because it's multidimensional.
Toes.
Yeah, because it's multidimensional.
Yeah.
One has,
and that one really cries out for a matrix. The other ones, I think people look at matrices and they draw blanks or
I agree. Yeah.
They'll misfill different cells and things like that.
Yeah.
So much better just to do the list as we have been doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the table on number 3 is like a necessary evil, basically.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
other
did
thing,
want to revisit too the issue that was brought up, and it's part of the comments and also as part of the wording here. So I think the where you guys had left it was to do percentage increases, right? But I'm struggling with that just because of the COVID economy and because that right now, the way we're asking that question, we're basically going to get an outlier answer. It's going to be interesting data just for this blip period in history, hopefully. But for me, the most reliable data would be increases that went from, say, 2015 to 2019, or to 2020, where you didn't quite hit the COVID economy yet, and that would get a better representation of of a reliable long-term trends. So I'm still kind of struggling with how to do that. My data gathering analyst hat, with my data gathering analyst hat on, I want to have at least 3 data points that I have in place so that I'm getting a good trend information. And so what I was pondering was whether we could ask the question twice, which is, what was your rate of increase, your cost increases from say 2015 to 2020? What was your cost increase from 2020 to now? Or we could use 2019. Either way, but that way we get pre-COVID and we get COVID. And so for me, I would be a lot more comfortable with that data versus getting only the COVID increase.
I think so I think there's pros and cons to that, and I see both of them. So the pro is exactly what Michael said, that like you kind of, theoretically you're getting like right up until COVID. So what was kind of the steady state increase on these things, and what is the kind of, I don't know, hopefully transitory increase right now because of COVID. And if you had good data on that, I think that would be instructive, like for sure. I guess the drawbacks would be that it increases the length of the survey and the complication. It's like a tower is now going to have to, he's like, okay, let me go pull my books or whatever from 2020 and go look at it and stuff. Like he's just going to have to go look and do more math, and they may or may not do that. I'm kind of 50-50 on that, on what Michael's saying. Like I would like that data, but also see kind of the drawbacks.
Well, my hesitation, I mean, I like the idea and I like the concept of, hey, let's try to factor in, because we just had to do this on an internal exercise, with time allocation. And it's like, well, things, what we were doing back in 2019 might be very different from what we're doing in 2021. And so ultimately, you just got to use the best information you have. One of the things that popped into my head, just as you were mentioning that, was, so we're going to have them tell us what vehicles they're using, right? So how many of each vehicle type they have. Okay. So we're probably going to, in some way or another, translate that into some of the costs that we're seeing, that they're outlining here. But if say we asked for this kind of financial data or this cost for 2018, 2019, and 2021. So you got 2 pre-2020 years and then 1 post-2020 year. So how are we going to, so say what they're putting here is that they have 10, let's say 10 vehicles. Okay. Well, maybe back in 2018 and 2019, they only had 5 vehicles. They've doubled the amount of vehicles they have. So how does that then translate into what we're comparing kind of across the board, the board with all the different data sets we're capturing here?
Like they might be like, my vehicle cost of income is doubled. It's like, well, maybe your business doubled. That's not the same thing as like per unit. Yeah, I don't know how to tease that out.
Well, and I think it's good that we have it split up in questions 1 and 2, one capturing the percentage of revenues, and then the second one actually having a monetary figure, which I think it's a good idea to have both. Because again, I think the percentages can help kind of from a more large scale point, but obviously the actual price figures in question that we're getting from question 2 are going to be relative to the size of the business. So you obviously the figures are going to be a lot higher for your larger tow companies, whereas they're going to be considerably smaller for your smaller tow companies. That's why I like that we're capturing percentages as well, so we can kind of weigh it all together.
Yeah, I agree.
But in regards to multiple years, I'm like you, Trevor. I'm kind of back and forth. I get Michael's point on that being a helpful data set to have. But yeah, I do wonder if that's going to be a roadblock to the towing carriers filling this out just in the first place.
Mr. Rich and/or Mr. Reister, y'all have any thoughts on the multiple years question?
So I do tend to agree that responses are always going to be helpful, and so making it easier is where I tend to lean. Then once we see that kind of early data, if we need more, we can go back and ask for that, and then it's a simple request. Like, yes, it takes 2 surveys and all that, but I don't think we need to pull that extra data quite yet, because yeah, I'd rather go for 85% responses instead of 45%, but everything we want.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm probably the exact same as Jeff. And I mean, what your increase now is what we're actually living with, right? If we would have been doing this in a low inflationary environment, we'd have got, low increases, and then it changed to the next year, we wouldn't have captured the real costs. And so I think we can maybe somehow try to figure out like, hey, maybe this isn't going to be every year. So we're not going to do increases based on, this year. We back it down some and look at other costs, but back it down or tie it to something like we did last time, right? We tied it to the inflation rate. Well, this year they should get a larger increase on the cost, or they're charging, because the inflation rate's going to come out a lot higher, and some years is slower. So I just think more responses is better, so we can kind of get a feel of what average costs actually are.
Yeah. And actually, even if we go through, let's say we do 2000, maybe whenever the last study was done, which is was it 2011? Is that when that was done?
No, well, are you talking about the Utah study or
No, like our last, the last towing task force when they built that model, was it 2015?
Yeah, it was like 14, 15.
Yeah. So maybe we do, if we did 2015 through call it 2021, I think that what information that would give us is we can look at those costs, what towers are saying. Now, again, this is self-reported, so I'll take it with a grain of salt, but towers are saying, hey, labor expenses have gone up X. We can compare that to the CPI during that same period. And what this tells us is, does it appear that CPI mostly tracks the expenses towers are having? I think that's the question we would end up answering. I don't think that these answers are going to, whatever their answers may be, are going to go into a new model for pricing. I think right now what we're trying to figure out is CPI a generally good metric, because that's the easiest one to get. And I think this would give us that. I think even if we had one set of years. So my argument would be not a strong one, but keeping it one set of years for the purposes of keeping the survey small and easy. And also it mostly answers our question, I think.
In the last survey, did we have a lot of these same expenses? Because I mean, I think if we compare the current set of data we got from the last set of data, and then also to the Utah, just to see kind of a band of what margins and expenses were, that kind of gives us a little bit of a kind of check and balance to what the responses we got now, what's happened in the environment and how that's done to operating expenses, et cetera, as compared to revenues, and see, maybe they're still in the same ballpark, because people in a lot of stuff raised rates as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we can. Yeah, I think so. This will match up nicely with the previous study, I think. And we'll be able to compare apples to apples. So I like the way it's set up right now.
I wish we had a copy of the last survey. I would say just do the same exact survey again, but we just couldn't find a copy.
Couldn't find it. Yeah. Okay.
Hey guys, this is Troy. I'm not invited, and I just jumped on. But Nate, I was listening to the last meeting you guys were on. I have a copy of the last survey.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I sent it to you, Trevor. I'll find it right now. I don't have all your contact information, but I'll send it to Trevor.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Try to find
Oh
it.
yeah.
I have it, and I actually think I have it. If you go back far enough, Nate, I can even find like the preceding numbers or whatever, but the actual results are talked about too in various proceedings came after that.
Yeah, no, I know the results are there, and even the cost model tool we keep referencing is even printed out, copied, inserted into the record in some of our proceedings. And I've looked at all that. I just could not find the survey anywhere.
Yeah, Troy, if you have the actual survey, send that to, I guess, me and Nate.
Yeah.
And then at our next meeting, we can pull that up and just see how they make sure they're at least kind of in the same ballpark of answering the questions, I think.
All right, sorry to jump in, guys. I just, right when I got on, you said if we had a copy of the survey, and I remember the last thing, I think I sent it to you, Trevor, but you got a lot of emails. I'll try to find it right now.
Okay, awesome. Thanks,
Yeah,
Troy.
and we did look for it. We were able to find the cost model that was used to input the data received from the surveys into that model and kind of shoot out some additional figures and percentages and such. But the actual copy of the survey, we did look pretty hard for it, and we just could not find it. So yeah, no, if you have a copy of it, that would be much appreciated. So we could just look at it, if nothing else.
Okay, good. Number 4.
Well, so where
Okay.
where are we at on trying to get these 2 periods? So are we okay with questions that'll get the answers to those 2 periods?
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, post-COVID?
I think just keep it all one period. Just go from 2015 through 2021 would be my vote.
So we are asking for multiple years worth of stuff.
No, not necessarily multiple years. So like they don't need to provide it for each of those years. It's just saying during the period of 2015 through 2021, what was the total increase in your labor management fuel?
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. See, and I thought we might want to make that a different question then, because it's almost like these are two. There's 2 right here, which is estimate the net costs for the following years, which it sounds like we would want to keep that as what, 2021. I mean, that's the last full year.
What I would do, I would argue, you remove that and use the alternate. So estimate increases or decrease in the following costs between 2015 and 2021. And that's the only thing we're asking.
So at what point are we actually, so then what question would we be requesting actual like monetary figures? Because again, that, based on my previous comment, that's what I liked about the way question 1 and 2 are set up now, is that one's asking for percentages of overall revenue covering these different categories of cost items, whereas question 2, the part I have highlighted here, is basically saying what are the net costs. So it's like we're asking for a percentage of all overall revenues, but then what are your actual costs for these same categories, which I liked that split, having both sets of data. But then this is like a whole different question. This is almost asking, okay, between 2015 and 2021, what was the percentage increase between those 2 years? So a period of what, 6 years? So, and I think that could be helpful too, saying, okay, how much did each of these categories increase between, point A and point B, 2015 to 2021? I think that's helpful too. But again, I don't know if we can splice what currently is listed here under question 2 and what's listed right below it. I think those are 2 different questions.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying like we'd actually have a set, like, so the first question would be estimate the following net cost for the, I might remove following years and just say for 2021, maybe. I think multiple years would be hard. And just say like, and then list those A through G categories. And then question number 3 is estimate net increases or decrease for 2015 and 2020 of those same categories.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
What do you think, Michael, or anybody else? Does that sound okay?
So far it sounded good. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the growth issue, the business growth issue, and what the real numbers are going to be versus the increased numbers.
So if
the use that information.
So I would say this will with some minor exceptions, towing companies that were around in 2015 for the most part have not grown much. Towing companies generally don't grow that much. But second, like if they grew, generally speaking, for example, like their percent of costs on fuel wouldn't necessarily change as they grew. So like they all kind of grow linearly. Like if a tow company grows its revenue 2x, its labor costs are mostly going to grow 2x for the most part. If that kind of makes sense or not.
It does. I guess I'm still worrying over how useful the data is going to be and what we can do with it. But still pondering. So
Yeah.
I don't really have a constructive suggestion yet.
Nate, what we just discussed, will you change it to reflect that with another question, and then everyone can kind of see what we were talking about?
Sure.
It does sound like it would be good to have both. The other issue I have, I guess, with asking for the numbers part, instead of increases is, that the increases people will be able to estimate, just while they're sitting there and filling out the survey. Whereas if you want to say, what are your costs in this particular category, they'll have to go to their figures. They'll have to pull out their books. So I am a little worried about getting dropouts because they're having to go to their books.
So I think this is how it would read. So question one is essentially asking, okay, as of, and do we want to put 2021 here?
Yeah, maybe just to be clear with them so they don't get confused.
Okay.
Yeah.
So estimate what percentage of your revenues go toward covering the following costs for 2021. So basically they would say, okay, I make X amount of revenue. The percentage of that goes to management is this percent, say 12%. Employees is 15%. Fuel is, whatever, 12%, whatever it is. And then they just go down all these different categories. And then, anything they want to put under vehicles and other is all there. But then what question two does is it basically says, okay, now you estimated percentages of your revenue up here. Now, what are the actual costs? Like how much did you pay in 2021 for management? Like what's the actual monetary figure? Same thing for employees, fuel, insurance, and that. That way we can use those two things together to get kind of a feel for size. Because if all we have is percentages, I mean, it's going to be hard to try to figure things out. I feel like. Yeah. And so that's why
we can kind of back into revenue. What is the average revenue of a tow company? Sort of. It won't be perfect, but we can kind of back into it a little bit.
And then, And then what 3 does is it basically says, okay, now, notwithstanding questions 1 and 2, what percent, because this will be a percentage. So you'll get an answer in a percentage to question 1 and 3 and an actual monetary figure response for 2. And then, so this basically says, what's the net increase or decrease in percentage of these category costs between 2015 and 2021? So for example, if you were paying, if revenue, if the percentage of fuel, for example, this year is, X percentage of revenues, what was it back in 2015? Like over 6 years, how large has that percentage increased? So it's gone up by 50%, let's say. So it was 12%. It was 12% here in 2021, but it was only 6% back in. Well, that would be 100% increase, but you get what I mean.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and I think on those 3, where you have the little blank where they fill it in, just so they don't get confused, you should put either a $sign or a %, so it makes it clear to them what type of thing.
That's a good idea.
And then on number 3, just to prevent some weird outlying answers, estimate net increase or decrease in the. So maybe you say estimate total increases or decreases of the following costs between 2015 and 2021, because a couple of them might say, okay, on average they changed this per year, and so one person might put 2% a year, which turns out is actually like 14% over the course of all those years or something. So maybe some way to make the question number 3 very clear that you're asking for the entire increase over that time, not like an average or whatever.
Okay. And then 4 that's the one where we're going to use the matrix, right? Or the chart, something.
Yeah, correct. I think we have to.
Okay. And then I guess this would be 5. There it is.
Oh yeah. Okay. What is your hook fee? So this one, I guess these are 2 separate questions again here. So the first one, or I guess number 5 would be, you would list it out the same as we did on question number 1, A through E. And they would fill in a dollar value for the average hook fee in 2021. I think you might need, on question number 5, you might need to specifically say, what was your average hook fee in 2021 for the following weight categories? And then you list A through E, light, medium, medium heavy, and then they literally just put in a dollar amount. Oh, I'm sorry, you have to put consensual. Sorry, yeah, I forgot about that.
Do we need that? Just because I thought the way John was describing it, the hook fee was already presuming consensual.
No, like some of them will get confused. Like there is a hook fee for private property. And again, even though we know that as a technical matter, because the law changed, that like technically law enforcement is not non-consensual, like these towers are going to be using industry terms. And so some of them, like we know what the hook fee is for private property and law enforcement. And so we're specifically wanting to make sure they provide consensual, because that was the purpose of the question, or the purpose of our task, I guess, as the task force, is to see how consensual rates might compare to non-consensual rates, aka law enforcement and private property, which we do know what they have been because they're regulated.
What, I mean, do we just want to stick to hook fee? I mean, are there any other charges on top of a hook fee that?
No, not really. I mean, there's like,
charge for,
yeah, they
like,
might,
like mileage maybe, or
they might charge yeah, they may charge mileage. But I think that might be getting a little, well, I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe,
or what if because I would imagine you'd pay a little more if you were doing a hook, you know, in Aurora, and they were going to have you take it to Denver as opposed to like Lakewood.
Yeah,
you know, I would
you're
think
right.
you'd pay more for that, you know.
Yeah, so they'll have a hook fee, mileage, and then but then they'll have other, with consensual, it's like the pricing can be more targeted, I guess, right? So they'll actually charge, like they use dollies, so they'll charge for dollies, or they had to use a flatbed, so they'll charge for a flatbed, which could be a light duty flatbed. And so the fees aren't as structured maybe as they are with non-consensual tows, because the non-consensual tows, like the PUC literally says, like these are the only things you can charge for. But mileage is certainly one of those. So I might argue that you could say, what is your hook fee and what is your mileage fee, or what was it in 2021 for consensual tows for these weight categories? Now, what you will lose is they may also charge $75 or $100 to use dollies. And so like the information we're going to get isn't actually what the revenue that the tow company is getting, because there's other pieces of revenue that we're not going to be able to stick into the right category.
Do we want to, well, and maybe you're right. Maybe we should just not even bring up the mileage. Maybe we should just focus on the hook, because then we can at least make the comparison between the hook fee for a PPI versus a hook fee for a non-consent or for a consensual.
Right.
Because once you get into mileage, the mileage doesn't change. The mileage doesn't change for PPIs because it's based on rule. So I guess we probably don't even need to capture that. I think, and the hook's going to be the largest charge that you're going to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the hook gives you a directionally accurate.
So what if we did this? What if we set it up where it was essentially almost like two columns, like here and here, and it would be, let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about. So it would be something like this. And then we could have it broken out by the different weight classes, and then
2 questions in one, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then that way it's they kind of know. So we're capturing what they're charging now, but also at the same time we'll be able to see the distinction, and we can then derive a percentage increase based on.
I like that. I like that a lot. It's elegant. I like that a lot.
Okay, I'm just trying to reduce the amount of questions.
No, that's awesome.
So each one of these would have a weight class assigned to it. So if you have like 5 weight classes, we can do it that way. So something like that.
So one issue though is there's still the distinction between the different categories. So so we've got the three categories of the motor club, the junk haul, and the repair haul. So I'm curious if those distinctions are important enough to capture versus just average.
Okay,
I-
so he's talking about splitting these up, or
Yeah.
if we lump it all into consensual.
Yeah, I think it's okay with lumping it because, like, ideally, like the towers they're doing an average. So I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that we were like by statute required to like analyze this, I would get rid of this question because it's
Yeah,
like
no, I agree.
it's not going to be meaningful at all. And so I'm not too concerned about how good it is because it's not like they're not apples to apples comparison. Like, you're not going to be able to be like, oh, you know, they're doing consensual tow hook fee for X and the non-consensual rate is Y. So they must not be in parity because they're just fundamentally different things. But at the end of the day, like, we do have to, like, you know, ask the
Address
question.
I have to disagree. I don't think it's a meaningless exercise. I think there's ways of comparing things, and I think it's fairly important that we do as much as we can to get the data that would allow us to do that.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying we should be cautious. We should be intellectually honest with ourselves and like say, okay, you know, if somebody, for example, goes and at not a preset schedule, just whenever they have time, goes and picks up 3 cars from a car dealership and has 2 on a flatbed, 1 on the back, and they charge, I don't know, call it $100 a car, and so the total is $300, but it's $100 per car, is not the same as like a law enforcement tower, like risking his life on the side of the highway at 2 a.m. It's like, it's just not the same thing. And so we just need to understand that these things are not the same thing.
Right. No, very much understood. It's just when we are doing analyses, what you can do is what you've just done, for example, now is you've mentioned factors that make a difference for the costs. And so if you think about what those factors are, and you have some figures you can actually start to talk about. And I'm thinking that from the past cost model, we've got a fair bit of information on that. Then you can start to think about what costs go into the consensual tow versus what costs go into the non-consensual tow.
Right.
And you can figure out how to think of the revenues, what the revenues from a consensual tow are going, what kinds of costs those revenues are going towards. But you won't be able to do that unless you ask the questions that bring the data in for you.
Agreed. And actually, you know what else you
the
would
broader
get
the questions we have, the less ability we're going to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, and I would say what we will be able to get from this is like I'm interested to see what towers say the increase. You know, like, it may not be apples to apples, but how much have their average their average consensual rate increased from 2015 to 2021, or decreased, whatever that case may be, relative to the other rates. So like the direction in which they're going and the rate at which that's changing is instructive to us. So I agree with that. Like that, there's some good information here. I don't know how we'll use it, but we might be able to.
So I just got the copy of the last survey. Here it is.
Oh, there we go.
So it's not quite what I expected, but you can kind of get a feel for the kind of stuff they were asking for.
Yeah. I like our survey better.
Well, it's different for sure.
Yeah. And to some extent, I think they were answering different questions, maybe. But
Well, it was kind of a different approach.
yeah, it was a different approach for different purposes, possibly. Interesting. Annual fuel cost, because what this doesn't, their survey doesn't provide any indication of changes over time.
Yeah.
Or allow you to answer the question that we hope to sort of be able to answer is, can you make any observations between consensual versus non-consensual rates and stuff like that?
Oh, actually, sorry. This was This wasn't the towing task force survey. This was a 2011, 2012 PUC survey. Sorry.
Gotcha,
So I
gotcha.
think this is more what Michael had pointed out.
Yeah, this is what I think I sent you.
Yeah, I didn't think it looked
Meetings back.
exactly like this, but yeah, no, that's what it is. It's not the towing task force survey. So,
All right.
but it's something.
Okay. And-
So I think that's all the questions.
yeah,
I think I have an idea of probably how
just set
this
it
should
up.
be laid out. I mean, I know Michael kind of put this together. Did you want to kind of, if you want, I can kind of save this so you can remember what we were going to have it kind of look like. Or if you want, I can probably do it.
Yeah, well, since you're working on it now, I think
Okay.
this is the document to go forward with.
Okay.
I agree.
I can put something, I can kind of clean this up a little bit and make it look a little neater.
Okay. So I
what-
did have some other questions that I thought could be asked so that we can get a bit better information on the trending that I was still would like to get. So one, and I think it would be reasonably easy to ask and we would get responses. But these two questions would be something like, what is your overall cost increase from 2015 to 2019, right? Not asking them to itemize it, just how did your cost increases go generally from 2015 to 2019, right? And then from 2019 to 2021. And that way we're getting at least a net trend line asked question from them so that we can get the difference between the two, and we can extrapolate backwards from there with regard to the itemized increases.
Is that kind of what question 3 here does? I guess I assume that's what question 3 did.
Well, so question 3 gets us a line. Basically, what they're estimating is the percentage increase in each of those categories, but from 2015 to 2021, right? And if you think about what the data would actually look at if you were tracking each year, it's going to be a slower rate of increase going from 2015 to 2019, and then it's going to jump from 2019 to 2021. And so asking the broader question that I'm thinking of is not in the particular category, just what is your average net increase in cost, just period, from 2015 to 2019. That would be one question. Not itemized at all again. And then same question, but from 2019 to 2021. Is that making sense? Just the nature of the question?
I see what you're saying. I think it's a slightly different piece of information, but maybe a little bit redundant, possibly.
Well, it's kind of like asking the instead of the consumer, the CPI, right? You're basically asking what is your cost increase if you were basically the model for everybody else. And so, but what I'm looking for is getting just that one single number. And asking two questions to get that.
Yeah, I think I'm not against it. I just think mostly like if you take question number, I guess it's question number 3. If you combine all that together, that kind of gives you that, because ostensibly, like those A through G costs would equal 100% of their costs. It's kind of like a blended average of those increases. But
It
Well-
almost sounds like, yeah, what he's wanting is on question 3, instead of just saying, okay, from between 2015 and 2021, what was your overall increase percentage wise of your costs for these various items? It's almost like he'd want to capture a chart like this, where it breaks it out, where it would be 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018,
Oh, I see.
19,
Is that what
20,
is that what you're saying?
21.
Is that what you're saying, Michael?
Yeah, just
Okay.
because even I mean, even though we're going to get the net cost increase with question number 3, we're not getting the finer grain trending information, and because COVID is still, we've got outlier data with this question. What that does is it allows us to determine how much of this cost increase is due to this outlier nature of the current economy versus the more steady state economy that we were in before COVID. And that's, for me, that's still super important data to have, because I don't think it's okay to just go ahead with getting cost increase information that doesn't separate out the COVID versus non-COVID.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. My vote would be, I think it just creates, it just makes the survey larger and more burdensome. Like a tower would have to go and like do multiple calculations and stuff like that. And I could be wrong, but I just fear that the more we, obviously more data is better, but I just fear that participation level is going to go down if they're needing to calculate percentage increases over the course of 6 distinct years over the course of 6 separate expense categories.
Oh, no. So I wasn't suggesting that we go there. It was more to do a simplified version of it, which would be basically just, if I could state the question again, or 2 of them. One would be, what is your average total increase in costs, or what was your average total increase in cost from 2015 to 2019, right? Ask for just a single number. What was your average total cost increase from 2019 to 2021? Again, single number. And so what that number, what we'd like to do is have that as a comparison to what has been calculated as CPI. And that way we've got this really nice number we can work with. So that's all I was suggesting is
Yeah.
So
get that.
it sounds
Way
like,
we're getting an estimate of the outlier information of the COVID.
So
it sounds like what he wants to do is this.
I see. And then next to that have another column
Exactly.
that just says 2020 through 2021, I guess.
No, actually. So that would be great. I would like this. This does complicate it.
so I mean, I
That
guess
wasn't quite the question that I
I
was trying to get in.
I feel like so maybe I'm a little bit just simplistic, so forgive me. In what you guys are doing makes all the sense, but I mean, I think if we're and I know we have questions that we have to answer, but what we're trying to is set rates that's fair for the consumer, but also keeps towers in business, right? And I know that we're looking and trying to gather data of what the cost movement was over time, but even if we find it and it's different than, say, CPI or something like that, at the end of the day, we probably not going to find a better mechanism to, if we peg it to something so it grows over time, even if we said it changed different because they had different inputs than what CPI did. And so for me, I just think that we need to find what the current costs, and even though that the environment has changed, they're still the current costs. So like, what are the current costs that's fair to the consumer today and fair to the towing companies today? And then how do we, make that, if it's self-adjusting, how do we make it self-adjusting over time? I think all the data is great and it gives us different information, but I just don't know at the end of the day, when we go through all the exercises and we see that they're different. Maybe the towing costs are different than the CPI. My guess is the CPI is probably a lot more tame than what the average cost on some of the businesses are. At least in my business, if I look at the CPI and even the PPI, my costs have went up higher than that because the inputs I used did. And so again, I just go back to trying to make it simple so we can get the data to say this is a fair price today, and then we grow it by some mechanism, or at least we're just making recommendations to that. And outside of having, an abundance of resources, I just don't know that like all the stuff is good. It may make sense to us and help us a little bit, but I don't know that we're going to find anything different, even with all the data. So, and then I get it. Some people are data analyzers and can see it better, but me, just a simpleton, that's just how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I agree with Brandon. I think we just keep it simple, 2015 to 2021. The fun that might help us answer the simple question, which is, did their increase in cost from 2015 to 2020, self-reported from towers, is that kind of track CPI? Like, is it kind of close? I think is the extent of how much we're going to answer. But what do you think, Mr. Reister?
I'll be honest, the whole CPI debate is well above my head. So I'm not sure I have much to add here, to be honest.
Yeah, let's I propose this in the spirit of getting done by the right time. Let's leave it. I would propose this. Let's leave it as 2015 to 2021, as we initially did. But then next meeting, when we kind of like take a vote and slap the table on this, we get some quick input from some other folks that aren't here. And if it turns out that like, 2 people are like, no, we should be more detailed, but 12 of us are like, no, let's keep it simple, then we keep it simple. If it turns out that like there's 7 or 8 other people who agree with Mr. Pierce that we should get more granular with it, then I think we get more granular. So I think maybe we punt on that particular question until we have the larger group with us, would be my recommendation.
Just because I don't think my question is actually, you guys aren't quite picking up what I'm trying to ask. I was just hoping to get it clarified and put it into chat. I'm going to send it real quick. And it is basically in addition to what's there now. And the goal is not to complicate things at all. But just to get these 2 extra questions that will give us, I want to say, baseline cost increases. So, Mr. Rich, you were saying, for example, that your costs, you have a sense of what your overall costs went up and by what percentage. And that's all I'm trying to get is just a very simple question out.
No,
Okay, so he
totally
means
understand, and I don't disagree with it. I'm just saying at the end of the day, if we're going to have a self-moving mechanism, like we may not have anything better to peg it to, right? Like my guess is, my gut just tells me that we're not going to get these responses back that say their costs went up lower than CPI, and it probably went up more than CPI. But at the end of the day, we probably won't peg it to anything better, because it would be like, okay, so do you do it to PPI? And is that fair? But, when you get the debate of what's fair to the consumer, then it may not be fair to the towers. It's fair to the consumer to do it to consumer price index versus the producer price index. And that's going to kind of be the debate with this group, right? Because you have people that the towers want more, the consumers want less, and I'm in the middle, right? Because I buy from the towers to provide a service to my consumers, and so I want them to stay in business, but I want their prices to be low. And so all I'm saying is, at the end of the day, we might not find anything better, even if we get the information and more accurate information. It's then what do we do with it? Because we don't have a lot of different things to peg it to.
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's add in Michael's suggested question 6 and question 7. And then when I kind of propose this for a vote or whatever, before, you know, on the next meeting, I'll just get some quick feedback from folks if they think the survey's too long. If generally speaking, people don't think it's too long, then I think having Michael's Q6 and Q7 are perfectly fine and could provide some good information. So let's stick them in there, and then we'll take a vote on the length of the survey. And if people think it's too long, the broader group does, then we can remove those. Is everyone okay with that approach?
I like that.
Okay, awesome.
I don't actually think we
I-
need to put it into two different questions. I think we can capture it in a single question.
Okay, yeah.
Where we
Like,
could
oh, yeah,
say,
yeah.
so how much did
Have your costs
your
increased during the following
total
time period?
costs increase between 2015 and 2019 and it would be 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
And then what we can do
Just give them two different lines to answer.
is yeah, do basically have it set up this way here, where we can
Yeah.
have the 2015 to 2019. It'll just be one field, Michael.
Yeah.
And it'll be a percentage field. I assume we want a percentage field.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll make that a percentage field. And then yeah, it'll be basically, it'll look like that. And it'll be 2015 to 2019 percentage, and then 2020 to 2021 percentage. And then that's it. That's the whole answer field.
Yeah. Does that get to the heart of what you're looking at, Michael? What he just
Yeah.
described? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
It does. And
I'll
I'm-
add that in.
Yeah. And I want to push hard on this just because doing data analysis, you gotta have the way to think about outlying information. Blip information throws any kind of study off majorly, and so if you can't analyze it out in various ways, then you've got a set of numbers you can't work very well with.
Okay. And on that note, what we should keep in mind too, that when we get these survey responses back, we may have outliers that like we're going to have to throw out of the data set. Like if somebody comes and says that like my labor expenses went up 10,000%, like I don't think we should blend that into our average because that's like not probably reasonable. So we'll probably have to pull some things out that just aren't probably correct. Like you may have some tower trying to game the system or something.
Do we
Yeah.
want to make question 6 question 4? Because it feels like it blends better with these percentage, cost type
yeah.
questions.
I
And
think
then
so.
we move on to, vehicle
Yeah.
types and tow types, and then the consensual tow information.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
Okay. Do we think that's going to be all our questions?
I think so. I think we've reached the upper threshold of the size of the survey, in my opinion.
I'll do my best to try to consolidate it into a single page if I can. I'm not
Great.
100% sure I can. I think it might have to bleed into a second page. But I think that'd probably be okay. As long as we can make it look like it's not too imposing, I think people will be
Okay.
more responsive to that.
Okay.
So-
All right. Great. Yeah. So Nate, you kind of clean that up and put it in the,
Yeah.
tables and stuff, and then maybe send that out to everyone so we can take a look at it before our actual meeting.
Yeah, our next meeting's on the 10th.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
I'll try to get it out. Or if you want, Trevor, I can send it to you and you can circulate it as part of the agenda, or I can
Oh,
send it
yeah.
out if that's better.
No, yeah,
what-
send it to me and I'll send it as part of the agenda.
Okay.
And I'll probably, just so everyone's kind of prepped for it, when I'll send out the agenda and kind of give a description of, the first thing is, hey, everyone check this out. And then a quick roundtable for anyone to have any significant issues with it, and then a vote. But I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm going to kind of try to get it done, right? As opposed to, I don't want to add in like the, gender designation of owners or get into anything kind of crazy that's not part of what we're actually looking at here. And so I'm going to be pretty firm about making major changes if someone has any real substantive issues, and then voting on it at the beginning of our meeting so we can kind of move on.
I would try to, Trevor, if that's the case, I would try to get it out as an attachment to the agenda, probably by the 5th. That's a week
Yeah.
from Friday.
Agreed, for sure.
I'll try to, so that being the case, I'll try to get that, the draft to you, no later than the 4th, the day before.
Awesome. Okay,
If
cool.
if that's okay.
And, yeah, and Nate, if you'll ping me on my normal work email and just say, hey, go check your task force email, so I'll make sure to go catch it.
Sure.
When, so Nate, before you put too much effort into getting this into one page too, I think it's important to consider just other identifying information. It's going to probably need to be in there as the beginning information, like who are you, what's your name. If you want things like I don't know if you're going to need to ask for the any kind of registration numbers.
Yeah,
Um, But there will be, I think there will be some other information, just identifying information that's going to be needed.
Yeah, and I know we had talked about that a little bit in our last meeting about having, and I don't know that we ever settled on what we wanted to do, but we could just make it something as simple as, for example, having just like company name, or, oh, sorry, was on the wrong, there we go. Company name, and like PUC permit number. I mean, is that something that you think would be okay, or?
I think that I think
Like
we're
that?
differing. We talked about this last time of like, basically should it be anonymous or not? I think we vote on that at our next meeting. Like real
Okay.
quick, I'll just call a vote on should it be anonymous or not, because I think there's going to be some differing opinions on that, and I think there's certainly pros and cons in either direction. So I think we put that there for now, and then before we vote on the total survey, I'll have a vote. We'll call a vote on anonymous versus not anonymous, and just majority wins.
Just as kind of a preface to that, because I know we've discussed it in the past as we've been talking about the survey, is I think as long if we and it's something we put as like a little footnote here under these fields, or maybe it's something we put in the actual email that we're going to blast out, where we basically say, even though company identifying information is included in the survey, the data will be aggregated in such a way that will make the data anonymized in any subsequent, whatever, something like that, so
Yeah.
that people know, yeah, you're going to put your company name and your permit on here, just so that we're not having anonymized stuff come in. But by the time it's ready to be part of a filing or some kind of a data set that we're using and filing as part of proceeding or whatever, that information will not be included. As long as we make that clear to them, I think they'll that will kind of assuage that concern.
Yeah, and I would say if we could, I guess, aggregate it at, frankly, Nate, your level at the PUC,
Mhm.
and then not at the task force levels, because I'll just be transparent. Like, if we provide individual company information to this task force, like, it will end up in the news. Like, individual companies will be my information will end up in the news for sure. And so I think we should aggregate it at your level, Nate, and then provide the task force with the aggregate information.
John, do we still feel like that's like we can do that? I know we've talked about it before, but I mean, is that still the prevailing opinion that we can? And that's the other question I was going to ask is, what's the receptacle for this? Like, where are people sending this? Are they sending it to the PUC? Like, are they sending it to me directly? Kind of in my capacity as kind of the administration in the background of the task force, or I mean, where would we want this data to be going for the aggregation? Because I do worry a little bit that if it's sent directly to me, that there might be some issue where, somebody filing a CORA to the PUC could through some weird way make that information CORA-able. Whereas if it's sent through a different medium, like through the task force somehow, the task force can aggregate it, and we have that layer of protection of that initial data set coming in. Do you have any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I think the latter is fine. If as far as how you would want to administratively set it up, where they go within the task force does give us a little bit more protection from just broad CORA requests. And for your first question, yeah, that's still the prevailing opinion over here in the legal corner of the world. I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
Actually, Mr. Roberts, I guess a follow-up question. So if we took that approach and then somebody submitted a Cora request, for example, that said, I would like a copy of the, survey response of Connolly's Towing. By law, would it be required that that's released to the person making the Cora request?
Probably not. I think it would fall under one of the several exceptions to Cora. I could make an argument to a court with a straight face that would be protected privileged information.
Could you, Mr. Roberts, like do a little digging or something and find out? Because I'll just be transparent. Like,
yeah,
I personally, as remove myself from the task force as a tow company person, like I won't fill out the survey if I wasn't confident that it wasn't going to get out there.
Yeah, I can have that ready for the next meeting if you'd like.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Okay, yeah.
And here's kind of where my concern was based, just because I have just a general state email address that I've had for many years. And so I obviously didn't need to have a designated state board email address assigned because I already have a state email address. So unlike a lot of other members of this task force who have like a, board dot and then, whatever the rest of their email is, I just have a general state one. So I'm very, strict with myself on keeping the emails that are task force related separate from like all the rest of my emails that are all PUC business related. But while I have that distinction, how I have my email set up to have that distinction, I do just worry that since it is a state email address, if I end up being the receptacle, again, the fact that I don't have one of these very specific, board dot whatever email addresses, that's what makes me a little nervous about the responses all coming to me. So that was my concern about it.
What are the other technical options, Nate, as far as, is there like a share file or something, or some sort of and I'm talking like I know half of what I'm talking about, some kind of cloud share thing or something out there?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I might have to do a little digging to figure out if that's a reasonable or realistic option. I do know that I think our in-house OIT staff can somehow set up kind of these dump emails, so to speak. But I think we may be running into the same issue, because if it's an email set up through the PUC for, even though it's kind of a towing task force related purpose, it's still kind of more internal to the PUC. And that I just don't want to put us in a position where wherever this data ends up being submitted, somehow there's some weird overlay or something which makes it Corable in some way or another. Like that's what makes me nervous about it. So
maybe does the PUC have its own IT, or you guys use Dora?
Both, actually. We have in-house that does some of our internal projects, but we also use desk side as well.
Maybe explore options with your IT entities with Dora and PUC, see what options are for non-specific. So in other words, it wouldn't come to your email as who you are, but more to one of those emails that don't reply to this because it's not monitored, that kind of thing. If I think this is not a huge concern for me, in that wherever it goes doesn't determine whether it's Corable. It's where we're going to store it and what we're calling it. If it's towing task force data within the within the towing task force website or under your control, we'd have to receive a Cora request that specifically asks for towing task force data on blank within a certain period of time. So just a general request to the PUC for information about common carriers or something, that's not going to embrace what we're doing here in the task force. We'd have to have a more specific request. But in response to Trevor's request, I'll have a more detailed answer at our next meeting for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, John. I'll say, so, as a general observation though, like, let's say the answer from Mr. Roberts is yes. If we ask for the identifying information, that will not be Corable and it won't go out there and no one will have it. Well, then my argument would be, well, then what's the purpose of asking for it anyway, right? The only purpose for asking for the identified information would be for someone to identify individual tow companies and their revenue, et cetera. Like, that's the only benefit to having the information. And so I would just argue kind of like, if it's not necessary for our purposes, why ask for it if it's going to drive down participation?
Yeah, and I know this was something that was brought up, and there was, I think, a couple different members that had some concerns about receiving what is tantamount to anonymized data just right off the bat. I think they were more receptive to the idea of the data coming in to us that is identifiable. So at least all the members of the task force are like, okay, this came in from a legitimate company with a legitimate active permit number, all of that. And then at that point, we then aggregate it into a more anonymized format.
Yeah, gotcha. But and my concern is specifically with the task force is the problem.
So, yeah, an additional piece in here too, because this is a fairly important issue, is that we're going to need a preface to the survey. So something in an email, as a separate email, or something along those lines. And in that, will need to be an assurance of the of what would be available through public records requests. So so that needs to be stated. And John, I think we probably are going to need your help here, just because the language in the assurance has to be probably fairly carefully said. And so so I'm thinking that the preface has to be really clear. We're not going to leave. We're not going to reveal your identifying information, or something along those lines. And it's going to have to be an assurance we can actually make.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Michael. I actually think the language we put in the blast email might even be more important than the language we put in the survey, because again, just getting them to say, oh, okay, that seems reasonable, and then just click into the documents in the first place, that's a big hurdle we have to breach. And so I do think that, I've already been thinking of some draft language for that, so I can put something together prior to the meeting we have on the 10th, just kind of as a foundation or a baseline. That we could use, and then we can modify it and shift it around to something everybody's comfortable with. But yeah, no, I agree. And speaking of that, one of the other things I had brought up with our director recently was if it would be appropriate or okay to somehow make this a survey we're doing almost quasi in conjunction with TRPC, which may make tow carriers more comfortable. If it's something that the TRPC is also promoting, then we can, again, I think we'll see an increase in the responsiveness for these surveys if we mention that.
Yeah, agree. So, okay, awesome, everyone. Well, unless anyone has any other big ticket items, I think we're kind of ready to slap the table. And Nate, you get that over to me, and I'll get the agenda and this final version out to people well before I normally do. And I appreciate everybody jumping on here. I know you're busy, and we'll see you guys on the 10th.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.